So let's look at it like this, right? If I go to trinket, I'm going to use one of my trinkets to PRG-160. And I hop in and I look at like an array. One of the first things that's going to become obvious to me when I look at this array, there we get one up, PRG-160, CSS, JS. That's the pop. I don't want that one. Split, slice. When I come in and I look at an array, all we're doing, right, is we're establishing essentially an object, a variable. And in JavaScript, what's really cool about JavaScript is it's very flexible, more flexible. Those of you that go into other languages outside of JavaScript will be like, oh, I hate this language. Not JavaScript, but the other language. Because I don't think there's any other language out there that we can just say a variable equals, and on the other side, put any kind of data type we want, and that language will assume what that data type is, and 99% accurately be correct. All others require you to say, I'm putting in a number. I'm putting in an array. I'm putting in a string. Can you turn your mic off? I'm putting in a, right, whatever. So it becomes very frustrating when you step outside of JavaScript for a while. After a while, you become okay with it and you accept it. And you actually, for some of us, we appreciate the specificity, right? Of it, right? Because then we know what we're doing exactly. But JavaScript, very loose language. And what's cool in JavaScript is that we can build an array, right, by establishing a variable, giving that variable a name, and then we can essentially, JavaScript immediately knows we have an array. The second, we're putting, right, stuff inside our brackets, braces. What do you call these? Braces, brackets. I don't know, right? So we can establish an array that way. What's really cool, and we can put, right, infinite information in here. Can somebody turn up their microphone, please? Hello? I'm hearing a door and all kinds of stuff going on in the background.
Don doesn't have sound right now, but I slacked him what you're saying.
Donald. Hey, Don.
And I let him know that because he asked me if I had sound.
Gotta love that guy. So what's really cool with arrays in JavaScript, right, is that we can go ahead and we can build a list like this. And when I say build a list like this, what's super cool about that is that it's nothing but a bunch of comma separated strings, right? Which means all of a sudden we can build this object. We can take this long string of information. We can even take a, what's really cool is we can even take a sentence and we can do what's called a split. See if it's in here. We can do what's called a split. And so what we like a lot of times in JavaScript, especially like we might want to peek up top here and see what the path is to the file that we're in or something of that nature. We can grab this whole string in our URL, for example, and we can say split on the slashes. And then all of a sudden we have, instead of having w3schools.com/JS, right, as one long string, all of a sudden we end up with w3schools.com JS JSArrays.asp. We can take this sentence and we can split it. This is really where I see the power of JavaScript staying, right? Where objects will take over a lot of common uses that we've used for JavaScript. But when it comes down to it, and we need to split, let's go into methods. Let me see if the split's in here. Fine, split. Nope. Splice. Splicing, no. Trinket. I knew I had one in there. There. My trinkets. Split. Split. Come on, baby.
At the JavaScript split for W3 schools, right?
There it is. Right there. Got it. Where you got to see this power in this is, right, is what we're doing right here is we're taking this string of information. And we know what we're doing with the button, putting an event listener on, and we're feeding it in here. And what we're saying, right, we're calling it a string. It's a string. And then we use this function, this built-in function, and we say on spaces. And when we do that, when we say on spaces, what's really crazy with this is that we end up with, this ain't going to let me edit, is it? Yeah, good. What we end up with is the ability to take this array that we now have. And if you look, everything starts at 0 when we count on computers, right? So 0, if I pull out 5 and I say run, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm not going to get 5, right? Because there's not 5 items. There is 5 items, but they start at 0. So therefore, the highest number I can use is 4, right? So if I run that and I go like, right, I get doing. Let me tell you, this Sony. For some reason, with Sony, their one chip vendor would send almost everything in a text file. And they would not. Every time we ask them to change. You know, like, too bad, too bad. Well, the text file was generated out of a COBOL system and dumped out. And at first it looked comma delimited, things like that. But after a while, we figured out the algorithm on how it dumped things out. And what was nice is at least even when there were null values, that system would output a comma for it. So we would end up with 2 commas next to each other, right? So let's just say the system did something like this: comma, 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 chameleon. Yeah, that's right. Comma, 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 right? Comma, comma, comma. Now let me ask you, before I mess with the JavaScript code below here, what am I? Oh, you filthy. I did the wrong string. That's all right. Copy. I'm going to put it down here. How many indexes am I going to end up with in this array? With the way that this JavaScript is sitting right now.
1. 1 for every comma.
Not yet.
9 of them?
No, it's only 1, 0.
Why is it only 1?
Because there's no spaces.
There's no spaces, and we're splitting on the space, right? So if it's different, I'll be blown away. baby came back undefined. Probably because of the fact that it had nothing to split, right? But we can see somewhere in here, it assumed a space. It looks like, oh, it's just running out of space over here. If I take this and I say commas and I run it and I try it, click is my first, right? If I put in, I imagine we can get 15 out of here. Two. Oh, thank you. I get too spoiled working in console. So 15 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That does come out a little wonky to me because is 14 going to be the? Maybe I counted wrong. I should be getting some values here. Let's crawl up. Button. One should be the. Button is 3. I mean 2. So the 3 makes, what's that?
I was thinking try 8.
So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You're correct. Right? So we got that value. So the point I'm driving at is, although I'm up here saying, right, I would invest more time in objects than arrays. They have their use. They have their, right? And especially as you get out into the industry and you start having to process information. You know, one of the most popular places back when I first started was just simply this. Because we were really stupid when we started doing the web, right? And when we would get people's information, we would use one field. We wouldn't use first and last name. I don't know how many of you can remember that. Like when we first started out, it was weird. Like even systems, you know, were like, and really where you saw a lot of this was the people trying to get into the web, hopping onto these free things like OS Commerce, which is really OS Commerce. The funny part about OS Commerce is it is the system that all other e-com, open source e-com systems and paid for e-com systems, actually, it's the seed to them all. You see a little bit of it in every e-commerce system you come across. But, right, things had to mature, things had to happen, and people weren't really thinking in the beginning like, oh, I'm just going to ask them for their name. All of a sudden, you have this database with 5,000 names in it, and some of them are Brian, some of them are Brian R. Savage, some are Brian Savage Brian, some of them are, right? And it's like, oh my God, boy, do we have a mess. So a lot of us were making money going into people's databases and just cleansing their names with a simple split function, because with that split function, right, we could come out and we could say, right, and we could see if we had a length of 3, we could almost always assume that someone put a middle initial or a middle name. Not always right, but right enough that customer service could handle, Sanchez, Fernandez, Sanchez, or right, one of those longer names where it has like multiples in it kind of thing, where customer service could handle those calls coming in like, hey, why did you have my first and last name in my first name and my middle name in my right? And, oh, we're sorry about that. We'll fix that, right? You know, like, you know, or Yakov, Smirnov, Piranov, you know, or something like that, right? But believe it or not, there was a time where we were making as much money as video games are making off of that simple little function there, you know, because people needed their data cleansed. Because as those of us who have been in e-commerce have learned, e-commerce is not just about the sale, it's about the strategic partnerships and pushing that data around and connecting those data points. And when you have blobs of data, it's really hard to make good, clean data connections, right? Not meaning technical connections, but aligning a user to a user or user information to something that needs to be there. So with the arrays, right, we have all kinds of ways that we can set up our arrays, that we can build our arrays. We just basically what that did is, right, built that array such as that. I don't want to go in there. Other ways that we can build arrays, which makes it nice. So here, to build the array this way, right, there was a time where you built it and that was it. Right? So you had to figure it out and build it in the beginning. And if you didn't get what you wanted in there, not good. As we move forward, right, we could start to dynamically build our arrays and things. And that was exciting because now we could use our arrays to do things like track where you clicked, track form information. Because at this time, we didn't have storage. We didn't have a place to keep information in the browser like we do now. Like now, we can grab information and put it in cookies or local storage or things like that. And I'm kind of giving you the old value because the old value, surprisingly, is still valuable, right? Because what you're doing is you're essentially saying, right, you can use these arrays and you can say, Travis, hold this, that, okay, give me that. Here, hold that. Hold that, give me that, right? Like you have a place to organize and keep things. But again, more and more we see people doing this with what? Objects, right?
Question. So what's more efficient and more usable to traverse, an array or an object? Are they both, can you use the same functions on them?
Oh my God, we could have all kinds of arguments over that. And I could stand on both sides, all four corners of the room and fight the fight. You know what I mean? Yeah. In the end, one might argue, well, if it's internal data and it's right there and it's available and it's already in an array, the more efficient thing is to use it as an array and keep it as an array. But I feel the more popular argument is, well, if I have this JavaScript object and I take this object, I keep it an object. By the way, when that system asks me for this information, I don't have to process it into an array or anything. I can just put it out as JSON, right? Oh, shit, I need to store stuff locally. Oh my God, let's take that array and let's break it down and let's get it stored in local. No, let's just take our JavaScript object, turn it to a string and stick it into local storage. And when we need to pull it out and say, hey, this is a JavaScript object, and bam. And that's where I think it's an opinion, and I'm not going to stand up here and act like it's a well thought out opinion. I can promise you this. I use more arrays in PHP, right? Dictionaries, tuples in Python. I use more arrays outside of JavaScript than I do in JavaScript anymore. And funnier yet, to pieces of the conversation we just had, I catch myself and others at this point. I'm like, screw it, man. I'm gonna take that object returned from the MySQL database, and I'm just gonna turn it into a JSON object, and I'm gonna use it in my PHP as a JSON object as well. Because again, I can put output, I can manipulate it, I can return it, and that's the end of it, right? It's why most of your databases, Mongo, things like that are, right? But again, not to dismiss the value of the array. Right? This way we can build an array real quick. Are we limited now to that array? Is that all we can do with that array? No, right? We can just keep adding to that array. We can keep, right? We can do cool things like, right? Build arrays that way. essentially, what's really funny, at the end of the day, that looks pretty damn close to an object, doesn't it? At the end of the day, what we're missing is keys and braces. Keys and braces. Right? Here's a way to specifically tell JavaScript I want an array, right? And make sure that it happens as an array, which in most cases it will. Arrays, I feel, are going to be one of those things that as you progress as a developer, you'll use more and more and more. But you can even see here, right? Which would you rather work with? The object down here or the array up here?
I'd rather have the object.
Why?
It's more specific.
Yep. Right? I can always know I'm going after that. If there's a glitch in my system and I'm off by one index, right? I mean, not like it happens that frequently, but still, to be able to do that. And we can do that, right? And do we have a example of?
On the same note, the array takes up
Less space. Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, like when you're going from 777 in Japan to a server in Salt Lake City, and it is, if it's fashioned in a JSON format, it's 12 gigs that you're sending over a data line for Sony. And if it's fashioned in a comma separated, right, it's like, I think it was like 5.8 gigs. Like it was more than half because you're getting rid of the indexes, right? But when you have control between point A and point B and you're dealing with files that big, sure, you lean them out. Why? Because you have control between point and what happens over here the minute that they hit the system, they're parsed into an object, right? It's crazy. Why? Because objects are just easier to write for. They're easier to, maintain better. I was looking for multi-dimensional. So the multi-dimensional array, even funnier yet, right? I mean, what did that really look like?
object.
Right. It's funny. I can't specifically sit up here and push one and not the other, right? And so on and so. All I can say is that I know for a fact that in all of my writing, this has been, the object has been the evolution of the array. And that's a personal perspective. Yet, just like anything else, right? The Ford F-150 four-door with heated and air-conditioned seats and power windows and sunroof, right, was the evolution of the farm Ford F-150 that was used to push hay around and things like that. And guess what? There's still a place for that truck. You know what I mean? That beat-up truck kind of thing. Still a place for arrays. But what I would challenge you, especially like over the summer, I'm kind of focusing a lot on over the summer for people that are going to be thinking, and he's going to be drinking beer. But those of you, right, that you're thinking about the direction you want to, like, where do I put my eggs kind of thing. You know, Tyler and I had this conversation, and hands down, Tyler, you know, should I learn this? Should I learn that? He's all excited. He's right. He like wants to touch himself kind of thing. He's that excited, you know, because that's what you do when you're a developer, right? And dude, don't learn anything but JavaScript. Honestly, right now, in my opinion, right, if you're standing at the roulette at a table for 6 hours and every time somebody puts money on black and they win, where are you putting your chips? You know, like, right? And this technology shit, it's putting your chips on the roulette table every time. But there's just way too much being embraced out there with JavaScript. And also the other thing I pointed out to him, which I would mention to you all, is instead of like going out to become a Node.js expert, what I would do is I would learn how to install Node.js, use NPM, and understand what they are at a not a deep level, but just understand what they are and what they're doing for you, right? Use NPM to leverage Node.js to use libraries as you build your code to do things like minify, lint, check your, right? And slowly work yourself into Node.js as you're evolving your JavaScript skills. And when I say slowly, sure, don't like be a puss about it, right? Like go make a package. Meaning, so in Node.js, when you create an application, you have to create a package file right out of the gate, right? And you've got to start building your server and things like that. Not that complicated. Honestly, has anybody done it? I think it's a 15-minute activity if you push through it on Node.js page, right? All of a sudden, you're like, you write the hello world, but you get that immediate gratification of like, holy shit, a server and a port and holy shit, right? You know, like it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. But then I would stop there and I wouldn't stop evolving, but I would stay focused on one of the things he's doing this summer. I'm going to do it with him and I already purchased it. And if anybody's interested, I think we're going to try to meet once a week is what we were talking about. ES6 for everyone by Wes Boss. Incredible, like corporate companies like pay him to come in and like kind of like spring training for football players kind of thing. But going into new JavaScript, right? The new ES6, and actually I think he talks about going even a little further than 6, right? We're at E8, I think, at this point. And there's exciting things coming. And again, that's why I mentioned this, because I've been really looking at E8 a lot. In E8, yeah, there's still, right, all this functionality for our arrays and things, and they still have a place. But holy shit, man, things are really pushing towards that object. So keep that in mind. So do we understand when we're in an object, right? That essentially, I'm not an object, sorry, in a array, that there's different levels, and we would call this a multi-dimensional array. Do we understand what I mean by that? By a multi-dimensional array? This is not a multi-dimensional array, right? Actually, I lie, it is. Crap, it is. Why do I say it is? Anybody tell me? Why is that a multi-dimensional? I'm not even reading. You can tell now because I'm like,
It's an array inside of another array.
how do you know that? Brackets. See? Open, close, and then open, close. And what's really funny is it's a bunch of arrays inside another array because each one of these is an array. So if we took this, oh, dumbass. It was your fault, Jason. And I put that in here. Well, that's not pretty, but that's okay. And I put that in here. And again, right, this is a great place for console to play with this kind of stuff. And I create a var and I call it activities. And I hit enter. And I go to activities. first thing we're going to do without doing anything is let's just take a look at what we created, right? So we see that code. I'm going to clear it so we can see. And come in here to activities and I hit enter. And what do I see? Right? I can, if by hitting the, if I come down here and I click in here and I hit the up arrow, I can see the code I used to create that, by the way. You can kind of like go through it, right? And we can see that we essentially created this, right, array of arrays kind of thing. So does it make sense to you that we created an array of arrays kind of by looking at that? That would be my first question. Because the first thing we see, the first obvious thing we see, right, is what? An array. And that array is really represented here. And we can ignore the fact that this is an array, and it's just that there's data, 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 and it's separated by these pieces, right? And then we can look inside this array, and we can see that we have values in there, correct? So all those functions, by the way, which is one of the biggest reasons this will never go away, all those functions that we're talking about, look, again, if we don't understand this, keep trying to wrap your head around it. One of the things JavaScript does when it builds an object, when it creates an object, is what? And think about what I'm doing here. What does it do for every object that it builds? Go ahead.
Creates a prototype. It's like creates the answer to every function run.
Right. It basically gives you the JavaScript library separately. You know how we talked about execution context and how, like, you know, the code inside a function will just be in its own memory space kind of thing? One of the cool things about JavaScript is when you create an object, in most cases, unless it's a soft, well, even a soft, it essentially attaches almost everything. See these? All these functions. Almost everything is, as Tyler put, that can be done with that object. And it puts it right there for you. So when we see, right, when we see different, right, different things that we can do, pop, push, you can get the index of, and then we can actually come in and see, right, are there arguments and things like that? You know, what's the length? This is, so where's length? Length should be in here. Length. All kinds of information right there. And when you start using console to learn, it's when it starts to make a lot more sense, when you're like, okay, I want to get that piece of information. Well, how do I get that piece of information? Oh, well, I think I go into my array. I go after, well, let's see what we get with 0 first. What are we going to get with 0? Anybody? Work? We got the array of work, right?
Yeah.
So, but I have to get this. Man, my client's pissed off, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, I put activity 0. So that would mean, let me look in here, right? 0, oh, 1, 2. I'm going to give that a shot. Let's see what that does. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, instead of 0, I'm going to put a 2. And son of a bitch, there's that. But I really need that string. So what do I do next, Jimmy? If I look at that, that's what it returned. That's what this returned. This right here, yep.
So you would put a second box bracket or whatever and put 0.
Right.
That's a multi-dimensional.
That's a multi-dimensional array, right? So we can go down, I believe it was on this page.
What if you used a comma, like 2, 0 in the same brackets? Would it do anything?
So Chris's question is, what if we used a comma? So when you say, what if we used a comma, you mean,
So if you tried to call it like, if you were new to it and you're like 2, 0, but you put brackets around the 2 and the 0 inside, the 2 and the 0 inside.
yeah, hang on. You mean inside the same brackets?
Yes.
Picked up the 2. No, it didn't. Picked up the 0. Went off the last.
Okay.
And my answer is based on the results I see. There's no professionalism in that answer whatsoever. I've never tried to do it like that.
I figured it was something I would try to do. So
Well, one of the things, so we know when we're accessing like things like this, right? One of the things that we know, you see people, right, do some funny, it's funny watching people sometimes is they'll try to mix dot notation with bracket notation kind of thing when it comes to indexes. But when we're talking about indexes, we're talking about indexes. And this is where key value pairs make a big difference, right? And so I want to come out and find a, now if you notice, a lot of my results are what? Why is that?
Just put PHP in the search bar.
You son of a, I didn't, it automatically put it there. Damn it. But it won't surprise me if they're similar results because at the end of the day, where are arrays being used more? On the server. Really, right? So we identified some of the beneficial differences between arrays and objects, right? Is they're lighter weight. Also, a lot of our server-side software, the first object that they create after a query or something like that is an array. It's usually in the form of an array. Also on the server, if we're crunching, the NSA, I'm sure, is using arrays when they're crunching, right, all those words and things coming through their database as they're sifting through tons and tons of communications data, trying to find words like bomb and ISIS and, right, like things like that. I'm sure they're not using JavaScript objects for that. I'm positive they're not, right? Yes, sir.
I have a question about, so associated arrays in JavaScript, wouldn't they just be objects, and then would they be parallel arrays, not associative arrays? I'm a little confused with the terminology.
So where it becomes a little confusing, right? And I'm trying to think of how to even address that question. To me, again, this is where pretty much everything that you see and do in the end is going to end up, right, an object. And you can see, right, every time you see a conversation about an array, by the way, this is what you'll see, which in PHP is equivalent to, right, because that's the argument, right? That's what happens. If I put matrix in, I have key 1 and key 2. Let's see. So if I go matrix, and let's see if I can do, right? So multi-dimensional lets me treat it like an object. I'm not trying to skirt your question, right? And if I come in and I grab key 1, I end up with that array, so to speak. The thing is, what's really funny is, so what Tyler's asking, type of matrix. in the end, I really do. I don't know for certain, but in the end, I really do believe that we'll do that again so you can see it. Type of tells us what our data type is. If I ask it, even though that's a multi-dimensional array, I believe in the background, JavaScript's like, screw you, don't treat it like a, and I could be wrong about that. Jimmy.
That was my question.
Right. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but I think in the end, your professor would have to be a little more scholarly and do some more homework to answer that correctly, right? To answer that fairly.
That's what you're saying.
Right. That's where I've shared that with you before, and that's where it's frustrating, like becoming a teacher, because you're writing content and things like that. And one of my most exciting things about becoming a teacher was, oh, I'm going to get time to like really dig in and understand some of the shit that I do. You know, like, yeah, that don't happen. It don't happen. But in the end, right, pretty much what we can do with an array, we can do with an object. The nice thing about an object is we can argue that an array is thinner and it's cleaner. But the minute that we obfuscate an object, we're that much closer. Meaning this, right? If I create an object and I say const who, right? And I have this object here. Inside it, I go, let's just say the person's name. I'm going to be ridiculous now. Oh, what did I get wrong? No const, missing initializer. What's my initializer? Where am I missing? Why I went all the way there. Let's just do var who equals. Was I missing the equal sign in there? So was I? Who dot the person's name, right? Put that in. If I do who see in here, we just have our object. So dot the person's name equals so AP. So if I clear this and I come up and I look at who dot the person's name, that there, when we obfuscate, and this here becomes A. So the point I'm trying to drive at is that scale, right? That argument of efficiency and space. Really, I'm not going to say it becomes completely a moot point, but it starts to become a moot point, right? Because now we're kind of comparing tangerines and oranges kind of thing, right? And it's a preference thing. But again, you start working with a system that you're pulling gigs of information every night. And remember, every business is number one objective is what? To grow, which means it's not going to get any lighter, that load, hopefully, right? And so it's going to grow. So if you ever end up on an enterprise level system or in a position working for a place that could become enterprise, you should always be, you know what? You start your own business, you think freaking enterprise, period. From go. If you have 2 customers, you treat it like you have 2 billion customers. 2 reasons. The first one If you ever get there, you'll already be there. The second one, you'll never get there if you don't act like you're there. Right? Like,
Even if you obfuscate it, as far as the people working on it, as far as the data readability, you're still dealing with size. As far as objects are still bigger.
Yep, to a degree. And again, that comes down to your personal, right? If your data is solid, right? Which good luck, especially in larger businesses. Remember, we're only what? 91, 2001, so many years? 10. We're coming up on 2021, 20 years. We're not even 20 years into the internet yet. Do you get the point that I'm making? Like as e-commerce, as a solid. Tim Berners-Lee, hypertext markup. When was that created? Anybody know?
In the 1980s to mid 80s.
Nope.
I'm going with Jimmy in the 70s.
I just graduated high school. I could be corrected, but I'm pretty sure it was 91. 91 is when he had his breakthrough at CERN's Institute. Because he got sick and tired of sitting there hacking between multiple machines trying to find information on things. So the point that I'm trying to drive at is we're still in the cowboy phase of this thing, right? We're still learning. We're still evolving. We're infant, right? And so back to moving data, consistently moving data and integrating systems. There's a reason. It's kind of funny. There's a reason why when we started using APIs to talk between systems. Now, I'm not talking internal. Internal, hell yeah. Leave that thing out, right? Because you have control of every aspect of what's going on. But when you start connecting two endpoints together, you're counting on those endpoints maintaining a standard, a way of doing things. Now, when you say, you know what, I'm a distribution, I'm Nike sneakers. And I sell to over 50,000 shoe stores in the world, or Hasbro, better yet. We went up to Hasbro, Chris Spear, when you meet him, we went up to Hasbro and we had to solve their problem of it costs too much to take care of the mom and pop shops. We can't pay people to be on the phone and taking orders and doing things with mom and pop shops. We don't want to exclude the mom and pop shops anymore. We want the mom and pop shops to be able to do what we're doing with Toys R Us and with FAO and things like that, right? Where they can just put their order in and it comes through and it's digital, right? And it's all EDI, right? But the biggest challenge was exactly what I'm trying to say to you about. This mom and pop shop uses QuickBooks 1992. This one uses Microsoft Money. This one uses this one uses that. And none of them yet are on the same freaking page about outputting a data file that's laid out in a way that it can be ingested by one system without confusion, right? Without mix. And so that's we're still there in a way. But then all of a sudden, the way that we started solving for that is we had, which God help us there. Oh, you guys should be so glad that you do not have to do integrations with XML. You should be so glad. Because when we first started trying to connect, right, systems together and kind of going after this open idea of, oh, you're a startup? Yeah, we'll give you a 5% discount. And if you want, you can tap right in with your QuickBooks to our system and we'll keep, you can keep inventory and you don't got to worry because we'll just keep your inventory coming, right? And, oh, do you want on-time inventory, by the way? You keep 5 on stock and we see that you sell probably about 12 a month. And we see that it's kind of sporadic. And we kind of imagine that you probably could sell 22 because the way the buying patterns look, you're out of stock half of the time. right? And so all of a sudden, right, they do this thing where, but the point is, again, in the back end, we have to bring those two systems together, and doing it with comma delimited and tab delimited files is ideal. But almost impossible, right, in these scenarios. And so we create these huge XML files where, like, holy shit, like 83 nodes in, you finally get to, my inventory is 4. You know, and this is after you've done, you know, authentication through Congress, through the Pentagon, NSA, Russia, China, North Korea, and then you finally get in, kind of thing. You know, like, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And you heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. It all came down to, with the web started from the server, not from the client to the server. And because it started from the server, all decisions about the web in the beginning were made by server-centric people. People who thought infrastructure, internal, right? And I'm not saying they were wrong. They were making the best decisions they could based on the experience and the knowledge that they had, right? But now you guys are becoming developers in this awesome period where the developers are the ones actually driving the technology now, right? Which is why it was such a huge leap from HTML4 to HTML5 and CSS2 to CSS3. Like, holy shit, because that was the first unveiling of the developers' true, this is what we want. You know, from things as simple as, why do we have to create on every one of our websites a div and give it the ID header and a div and give it the ID footer? Can't we just have a freaking tag that says header and footer? And by the way, while you're doing that, why can't we just create the tags we want? Why do we have to stay inside this box? Because honestly, I'd like to create a tag where it says sneakers and it says this and it's that, right? You know, based on my organization. You can do that now, right? Took 15 years of fighting, crying, and, you know. Waterfall. How many of you are know about methodology? It's something that needs to get baked in this program. What do I mean by methodology? Does anybody know? When I start saying names, you'll know.
Like test-driven development.
Okay, that's a methodology. Anyone else? Waterfall is a methodology. Any others? Kind of baiting you, and I want you to say one so I can shoot you down. So I make a very strong point about it. Any other methodologies you can think of? So I'll start with waterfall. Waterfall is this. I have 10 developers. I have 20 objectives. I promised him that by next Friday, I will get these 20 objectives done. We will not touch anything else except for these 20 objectives between now and next Friday. And we call that what? Anybody know? A sprint. Right? We work in development, we work in what's called sprints. We take work and we kind of logically put it together and organize it in a fashion that we can leverage our resources efficiently and make deliverables to our client and appease our client in piecemeals. The beautiful thing about a sprint for you on this side, right, is when that sprint starts, you get to say to the client, shut up. Talk to you later. Don't come in here and start changing colors, fonts, and all that shit. See ya. Leave me alone. Sprint. Well, this originally, so there's a really good book out there, by the way. It's a really old book, but it was the first person that really got into the head of software development. It'll come to me as I'm talking. But we kind of went at development with this thing called waterfall, this methodology called waterfall. And what waterfall did is I had these 10 people working on these resources, working on 20 objectives, deliverables, right, to be delivered to him next Friday. Well, 6 of these people would get done their objectives. And they'd be sitting there for a freaking week. right? Waiting until we finish the sprint so we can move on to the next objectives. And this really got crazy because the amount of money we were wasting, not only the amount of money that we were wasting, the sad part is we would put this in, commit it, go into test, start our next sprint. This would come out. These people would be sitting here for 4 days. Our test came back negative. Things needed fixed. And we aren't allowed to touch them until they're baked into our third sprint. It's true waterfall, right? So waterfall meaning, right, that drop of water, this is how I look at it. That drop of water can't hit down here until it hits up here. And so it's got to go, it's got to follow that, right? And then we had a bunch of different, honestly, it's just a cowboy. It was a cowboy industry for a long time. We were going off of rigid development based on, again, server-side infrastructure technologies, right? Like writing software, not web-based systems and things like that. And so I believe it was around 97, a group of people, developers, thank God, got together. I'm tempted to say Utah, it was. They had a summit. And the summit was, we are sick and tired of this bullshit, right? And what they did is they walked away with this thing called Agile. Is Agile a methodology, by the way?
It's not
Yes or no?
good. No.
Good. I'm glad to hear you say that. Because 90% of the world, including developers, think it's a methodology. Agile is not a methodology. It's a perspective. It's a position. It's an attitude towards development. It's a flexible attitude. It's an attitude that recognizes, number one, and first and foremost, is that the client, your client, the person paying you to do that development, has to be appeased. And therefore, you need to rip all those gates down. You need to rip all the fences down. And you need to do shorter sprints, right? And by the way, the example I used in reality would have been 6 to 8 weeks for a sprint, right? I just kind of compressed it. Agile, again, not a methodology. And you can go read what you want, and you can agree with them if you want to call it a methodology. I totally disagree with you, because the minute you attach it to a methodology, what you do, which is what a lot of people try to do, they try to take this term Agile, and they didn't read the manuscript evolved on that day, on that week that they were there. And what that manuscript was truly trying to identify is you're freaking nuts if you think you're going to take one methodology and make it work for 50,000 different development shops. That's insane. You're not using your resources right? Because at the end of the day, the best way to use your resources is to understand your resources and know their strengths and know their weaknesses and position them, and right and you know, waterfall. One of the biggest things waterfall would do to you, Steve Jobs, unfortunately, it's one of his negatives, man. He would slave drive his people. He would have waterfalls, right, for Apple computers. In the beginning there, he would just slave. I mean, his people were worked into the ground. The funny thing is Amazon, I believe, quietly operates under a waterfall. I mean, go look up Glassdoor, man, and look at Amazon and Glassdoor. I did, because I almost went there. So, go ahead.
No, so Agile is not a methodology. It's like a framework, right? For everybody. Would Scrum be a methodology? Like, 'cause that falls underneath the Agile umbrella,
Right.
but it's more specific.
There's a practice, right?
Yeah.
So yes, I would call that a pseudo methodology kind of thing, right? It's or its own methodology, right? When you get to places like eBay, and it's kind of funny because if I fought with anybody the most, it was the PMO, right? A lot of larger organizations have what we call a PMO, project management, right, office, or whatever they want to call it. And what it is a bunch of snotty ass, whatever. It's a lot of people that weren't developers, that haven't done the things that they're making decisions about what the people are going to do with their methodologies that they come up with. And that really sucks, right? So what you have to do is play a game with the PMO if you have a PMO in the way, right? And you just have to make a lot of love with them and get in that right place. Because again, agile is about taking all, sometimes you're actually, right? Sometimes you're actually applying waterfall when you're taking an agile approach. Sometimes you're applying waterfall. But it works right there for that portion of that sprint. And so why would you not put it in? Like, it just makes perfect sense, right? So anyway, and one of the big things is why would we keep using this color for the next 15 sprints when our client back here at the beginning of the first sprint was saying, I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. And it sounds superficial to you. And you'll hear a lot of developers, and this you say, oh, I used to get pissed off of my developers for this. What the hell who gives a shit about the color? They do. And they're paying your paycheck right now. And we want them happy. And if keeping them happy is getting them past one freaking color, go change the color. Don't dig your heels in over that. Like, what the hell are you doing? You know, like, but that's kind of shit we get into. Agile allows for that, right? Because Agile, a good Agile mindset always considers at the end of a sprint a demo. And you have someone sitting there documenting what the client is feeling and thinking. Because again, I know it sounds weird, but this is a touchy-feely thing, man. At the end of the day, we're talking about people. We're talking about preferences. We're talking about likes and dislikes. We're talking about being offended by colors. For crying out loud, do not use purple if you make a website in South America. Because there are still people there that will spit in your face for doing that, right? Because purple is color of death, at least so I understand, right? You know, like, it's not a great color to be trying to sell happy products with, kind of thing. All right, look, 404 is out, and you're going to start connecting. And one of the things that I want you to try to do between now and next week over the summer, as I pointed out, right, I personally think just go play with JavaScript, period. Seriously. In your journey in playing with JavaScript, right, it's not what we do, is why we do it kind of thing. So take this perspective. I'm going to make a website, an HTML5 SPA, right? Single page application, which is kind of what we're playing with. JavaScript, HTML, CSS. I'm going to make a website with the only piece of information I put in, string, that I create is the title. How do you do that? It's a good starting point, because your lessons now this week go into XML Ajax. And this is actually a lot of fun. Go ahead and click on that link. Today, my Web 100 class, and it's inside the time we had class, all stayed right along with me. They loved it. I loved it, my Web 100 class. Like, they're done. They're done in the final. My PM class, like, they blew through. And then they're like, can we build can we kind of build an app together? Kind of, hell yeah. Fine. Actually, I think you're in the back of the room when I'm with them. You're probably not paying attention. So that came up. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Nope. And it was a good reminder for me, and I want to put this out there to you. One of the things I did a lot when I was playing with JavaScript and HTML and CSS, 425. Yes. One of the things, one of the things that I did a lot is I would play with, and actually, if I wanted to, where's the download? Burger? Yeah, Jimmy. Thank you, sir. Show him folder. Extract that. I want to get out of this Trinket. Tired of lecturing in Trinket. I don't get me wrong. I love Trinket, but holy crap, man. Give me a freaking break. So it was really cool because we got to this point where they're like driving me, man. They're like, yeah, let's do something. Yeah, let's make it do, let's do, something. And I was like, all right, let's have some fun. Let's go check out. I haven't looked here in a while. Let's go look for some APIs. And I explained to them exactly what I'm explaining to you. When I was learning HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? You don't want to be worried about content, yet having content, especially lots of content and different kinds of content, makes you better at JavaScript, handling that content, right? Like doing things with it and stuff like that. And so what we ended up doing, I'll put the link out there for you guys if you want to go look at it, and you can download it. Got to make it fun. To me, the biggest thing that you've got to do is you've got to make it that you want to come back as soon as possible to doing what you were doing, right? And the best way to do that, one of the kids in the class, now I'm not a big football fan, but I use this as an example because what's cool is that my whole entire PM class is going on to 115. They want to go on to 115. None of them are web majors, but they want to go on to 115, which I thought was really cool. And they want to work over the summer. And so you'll just take it to a whole nother level than they would. But I was like, all right, Hector, what is your thing? Football. Okay, cool. Let's go out here and let's make it fun and interesting for you. So let's go and explore. And what this is it's a GitHub repo with a bunch of public APIs. What are public APIs? Anybody? Open source information, places that we can pool data, right? So we went in, I'm like, all right, let's go to sports. And we went to sports. And what was funny is when we ended up at sports, we ended up on this link, and it's called NFLarrest.com. And they're more than happy to share their information right out the back end as APIs. So right here, the documentation, I mean, it couldn't have been a better path for a 100 class, right? Because it just kept falling out. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This is great. This is great. As a matter of fact, when we come back on Tuesday, we're going to do refactoring. And if you look at the code that I just shared with you, what a great example for refactoring, because I'm doing 3 AJAX calls in 3 separate places where it's really one variable, one argument that could, right? So what's cool is the first thing we did is we said, let's pull the menu and let's pull the first menu and see what we get. Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. It breaks it down by the crime. DUI, drugs, domestic assaults, assault, disorderly conduct, gun, battery, blah. Oh, well, that's cool. So if it breaks it down by that, I see that I can go to crime. And this was just a great example. And this is the point I'm pointing out to you. It's just a great starting point for you to start playing because it gives you drill down, right? It gives you reason, motive to want to go the next step. And just like it did in my class today, which was this. Wow, that's pretty cool. So we get this small amount of information, but that's pretty interesting because look, it gives us a category and it gives us an arrest count. And so, all right, guys, so let's go ahead and let's build buttons off of these, because what's really cool, as we dug deeper and we found out with those buttons, all we have to do, which I thought was crazy. It's the first time I ever saw a freaking API do this, but it takes spaces. It takes spaces. So in other words, whatever that category is, when I go to the next level, that next link that you see in there, it just takes that category. So what a simple transition when I can just put that category name and an ID attribute, and then I can come into my JavaScript, right? And I can say on click, let's make another function because I want to show you some things about, right? Refactoring and stuff, and about not clouding up your view while you're developing and being creative, and right. So we'll build the menu, we'll make the call, we'll go out and we'll get the categories, and we'll build these buttons with these categories, and we'll attach an event listener to them. And then we'll say to that event listener, when somebody clicks on one of the categories, let's go ahead, and what do we get? We learned, okay, that we get the names of the people. And we get how many charges they have. Well, this guy, you could see him, right? Find your freaking passion when you're learning how to program, because you could just see him. And we literally ended class late because he's like, dude, let's go see what we get when you put the person's name in the API. And so of course we had to stay here till we at least got the information back from the person's name. But the point is so when you're playing with JavaScript, and what I would challenge you to do is in the lessons of 400, I would challenge you I want to put it in there, 404, I mean. I would challenge you to go ahead and this JavaScript info, this should be a bookmark site for you. I just put it in Slack in our channel. That should be a bookmark site for you. And equally so, this should be a bookmark site for you. Because as you grow, these 2 pages have enough information on them that you could spend, at the end of the summer, you'll still be using these 2 pages. You'll still be referencing. Maybe not as long as you do in the beginning of the summer, right? But I promise you, you'll still be bouncing back. And if you don't worry about, if you use things like placeholder.com, and then you focus on resources like this, and I mean, come on, there's hundreds in here of different things. You know, if you're into kitty cats, they got it, right? Best Buy, retail things, if you want to get information from different, right? If you want to pull their categories, if you want to make like a pseudo e-com, if that's what trips your trigger. All kinds of things. I really wish there was one about Trump. If there probably is, it's probably labeled Russia.
I just saw F off as a service.
Trump is a service.
No, it said F off as a service.
Yeah, right.
Look under orange.
Yeah. If you can't find anything else, play with weather. Weather is always fun to play with. Why? Because it's always updated. Right? Those of you who make it over to summer, I'm hoping some of you listen. If you make it over to summer and you get to webhooks and service workers, weather is probably the most fun thing to learn service workers with. Because weather's always changing. Right? Especially in the summer. Well, you know, it's a beautiful day, thunderstorm. Right? And so a service worker would alert that to you. And as you're building these little things, put them on your phone. You know what I mean? And who gives a shit how great they are or whatever? Motivate yourself, right? Get excited about what you're doing. So, I know some of you have slacked a little bit and things like that, but I would ask you with this next assignment, I really would ask you to take some time, if this is truly in your heart, right? If this is what you want to do, I would ask you to take some time, especially between now and the end of the semester. I'll be available throughout the summer. And you're always welcome. I think a lot of you know that. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'll probably be a lot more accessible over the summer than I have been this semester. But what I would ask you to do is I'm going to release this. I'm not quizzing you, nothing like that. Honestly, inside of your app here, what I'd love to see you do, go through the exercises, kind of look at what I'm doing in here, And for those of you who get scared and nervous when I say to do this, stick to the exercises. Use if you don't want to set up your IAP me site, if you don't have a me site, use a WordPress site and just pull your data and whatever. Those of you who want to get creative, honestly, I think this is the easier route to be honest with you. Go find an API service. And so over here, right, instead of using that array now, over here, populate it with those crime categories, right? Let's say you're going to do the NFL one, right? Put them over here. And then when you click on it, if you really want to challenge yourself, right, the easy thing you could do is just have them come up in divs out here in the content area. But if you really want to be a super rock star, have it that when you click on it, it expands and opens up and the names come out underneath it, right? Some of them might be too big, so it might be a better way, right? But I mean, just don't do things to get them done, right? Now's the time. When you get out there working, guess what you're going to do? You're going to do things to get them done. You're not going to have time to play and learn and push, right? And go in different directions and things like that. So I am releasing that for this one. And what I would encourage you to do is, again, go out and take advantage of the fact that I'm saying, if you produce, where the hell did I put it? Oh, out here. It's yours. I need to change the dates. I just saw that. Sorry about that. I'll update the dates. Don't get your panties in a bunch here. All you're gonna be like, oh, the asshole. And that'll be our last, right? That'll be our last. But what I'm asking you to do is take the time to do not even the steps so much as learning, right? Going in and just learning HTTP requests, because that's what we're reaching out and grabbing the APIs with. And populate this with something that when you click on it, it populates this with something. You achieve that, you got full credit for the assignment. Inside or outside the objectives of 404, right? Because to be honest with you, it's fun to connect to our WordPress site and things like that. But I also want you to be comfortable with, like, damn it, I just want to play. I want more data than what's in. I don't want to have to sit and set up my data in my WordPress site. I don't want to have to sit and do this. I don't want to have to sit and do that, right? One of the services out here that I love that thought I had a pull. I thought it right here, right? randomusergenerator.com. And you can generate multiple users, many users. Where that's exciting is look at the response it gives you for a user. Why is that exciting to me? That's exciting to me because it's given me real life, in a way, results that I would expect, minimum results, by the way, but still, right? Healthy results that I would expect within an organization working with an ERP. And therefore, because of that, those cards that we do in Bootstrap, you could pull 50 of these users and make 50 of those cards, right? And holy shit, now I know how to do that. Next time you have an opportunity to do something like that, your level of confidence is, I can do that. I know I can do that, right? I definitely can do that for $1,000, right? All right, I'll leave you alone now. Christina Aguilera. Do you know Britney Spears turned herself in? Poor
I didn't
girl.
hear that, but that's good for me.
I actually feel bad for her.
She seemed like
psych
a
ward.
good comeback.
Oh,
Actually, I feel bad for her. I mean, yeah, she has money and things like that and whatever, but she never even had a chance to be a kid. Like, she was Mickey Mouse Club member, then this, then that. How can you not be screwed up? Right? But what's cool is she did it on her own. She's like, you know what? I'm not right. I need help. I just heard about it on the radio. Hey, we all fall over once in a while. I don't care how strong you are. I actually relish, as sick as it sounds, in the thought that Trump curls up with Ivana at night and cries into her armpit. Night, sir. Night, gentlemen.
All right.
Good night. Have a good weekend, all.
Not
I
trying to
slacked you. I don't know.
but you were gonna show off someone some JavaScript quiz.
But,
Oh, yeah.
I had some questions.
All right, hang on.
I don't know if you want to catch up for 5 minutes after class or whatever.
I'm just trying to think here, Chris.
Okay.
I got to get with Don, too.
Whenever works for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of rushed to get out the door. And earlier, I'm sorry, I only had 6 minutes
No, I
between
understand.
class. Let me think about that for a minute while I share something.
Okay.
I was really impressed by this. I'm sorry, some people left, and I don't mean to let them out. And you don't have to stay and watch this, but I really was super impressed by this. So Travis, brown nosing because his homework is late because he's been drowning in networking.
Oh, networking is a bitch.
Yeah. So he wanted to demonstrate to me that he really is serious without a conversation, which I love, right? Like, let's not talk about it. Look, this is where my heart and my head is. Unfortunately, I'm just dying right now. So what he did do, can you give me one in particular that I could go right to?
I mean, they're all connected.
Yeah, but can you give me one to like go to? Do you remember? I'm actually going to steal them and try to incorporate them. I like it. Was it all the way back week 2? Week 5,
I mean, it doesn't
maybe.
matter which one you pick.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out which one.
Whichever one has the quiz questions.
It's not that one. It's not that one. Because it has a rubric, right?
Yeah.
This one. This should do it, right? Watch, it's the one that he didn't do. It opened blank.
You might have to go to the
This link?
the IO. Yeah, that one. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's right.
You want me to go to Firefox? I'll try
No,
and
it's just from when I was hacked and Google blocked all my shit. You might have to go to my GitHub pages.
send me the link in Slack. No.
Nope.
I gotta look into yours and Don's. I wanted Jimmy DeJesus, rock star.
I mean, not enough people follow you, right?
What's that?
Not enough people follow you.
So instead of just submitting as questions, right? This is what I opened up. I thought, Travis. Oh. And then I open it up. I'm like, all right, dude, you got my attention. Right? I don't know what the answers are, but I'm just going to. Not a boy. Right?
That's really cool.
Make me happy.
Make me happy with that.
Right?
I appreciate it.
And as you would expect of me as a teacher, I gave him a healthy, we don't need to discuss it, but I gave him a healthy lump of extra credit to make sure that, right, that he doesn't fail. Because there was a lot of effort. He did all those questions you did, he did them all like that. All. It was crazy. Good boy. Chris, I'll be up at 2:30 tomorrow morning. You available?
Have a good weekend, friends.
See you, brother.
Yeah.
What?
Talking 2:30 in the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be up.
Yeah, it'll be 12 o'clock your time.
Yeah.
I've been getting up to work between 2:30 and 3 the last 3 weeks.
I've been working. I usually do this homework stuff. Start around 10 and work until 4 or so, 5.
Yeah, that's what a lot of developers. There's a lot of developers that will work. They won't even start work till 11 o'clock at night. Especially them that work from home, because that's just their sweet time. That's their sweet spot. Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to get together.
And then there's a lot that'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know.
I mean, I'm serious about that time if you are. That'll work for me.
If I'm up, I'm going. If I get up, I'm going to Slack you, which I'm pretty sure I'll get up. If I don't, then tomorrow. Do I need to be on a computer for the conversation?
Possibly. Like I had some video playback issues, and I wasn't sure exactly what was going on with them.
All right. Is that in your Slack that I could preempt our
It is.
conversation?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Why don't I preempt our conversation?
Because one of the Slacks is in JavaScript, the 160 Slack, and then another one's to you personally.
All right. I'll preempt our conversation, and if we don't connect in the morning, we'll phone tag tomorrow.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
I'll be on campus, but I'll be doing different things, but I'll be able to come back to my office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, sir?
All right.
All right, Hooker. Catch you later.